I never imagined that moving into a quiet neighborhood would turn into something out of a bad drama series. But the day HOA Karen arrived, Peace packed its bags and left. From the second she strutted onto our street, clipboard in hand and judgment in her eyes, it was obvious she had one mission: control everything. The lawns, the mailboxes, the cars, the people, especially the cars. What I didn't expect was that she would actually attempt to take mine, and not just any car. My truck. It began on a calm Saturday morning. I had just wrapped up a brutal week at work, and was finally enjoying a rare day off. Coffee in hand, sunlight pouring across the driveway, everything felt still and easy. My pride and joy, a deep blue Ford F-150 I had spent years restoring piece by piece, sat parked where it always did. Clean, polished, mine. Then I heard it. The crunch of gravel. Not the casual kind. The kind that signals someone pulling in with purpose. At first, I figured it was a delivery truck, or maybe a neighbor stopping by. But when I peeked through the blinds, my stomach dropped. HOA Karen's son was sitting in the driver's seat of my truck, and right beside it stood Karen herself, waving her arms like she was directing traffic, shouting commands as if the entire street belonged to her. I didn't think. I just moved. I rushed outside, trying to keep my temper from boiling over. "What are you doing?" I shouted, my voice sharp enough to slice through her performance. Karen turned slowly, that smug, self-righteous expression glued to her face like it was permanent. She wore it like armor. "He needs to borrow it," she replied casually, as if that solved everything. "And I already told you, you can't just park here." I blinked. My driveway, my property, my truck. There was nothing community about it. I gripped my keys tighter. I wasn't handing them over to anyone, especially not someone who thought entitlement overruled ownership. But Karen didn't care about logic. She stepped directly in front of the truck. Like sheer audacity could somehow transfer the title into her name. The situation escalated fast, without hesitation. Karen pulled out her phone and dialed the police, claiming I was harassing her son. The nerve. I stood there, steady on the outside, calculating on the inside. Because while she thought she was escalating things in her favor, she had no idea I had something she didn't. Connections. Just a week earlier, I had assisted the state attorney's office with a neighborhood safety investigation. It wasn't something I bragged about, but it was recent, and it mattered. By the time the police arrived, Karen was pacing dramatically, ready to spin her version of events. She looked energized, almost excited, but she had no clue. The tide was about to turn, and that she was about to come face to face with consequences she couldn't bully her way out of. And that's when I made my move. The patrol car rolled up just as her son climbed awkwardly out of my truck. He looked nervous now, less confident than he had behind the wheel. Karen, however, wasted no time launching into her performance. She pointed at me, voice raised, claiming I had threatened her child. Her tone was loud, sharp, full of fake authority. When the officer approached me, I remained calm. No yelling, no arguing, just steady composure. "This truck belongs to me," I explained clearly, lifting my keys slightly. "She and her son had no permission to use it. I have full documentation proving ownership." I handed over my registration, insurance papers, and title copy, everything neatly organized. The officer reviewed them carefully, then glanced at Karen, who was still flailing through accusations. "What about the ongoing neighbor dispute?" Karen cut in, trying to shift the story. "He's always intimidating people." I allowed myself the faintest smile. I'd expected this. I'd seen her theatrics before. I knew her playbook. And I also knew I hadn't played my strongest card yet. The tension thickened as the officer requested backup and began collecting statements from both sides. Karen leaned toward me at one point, whispering threats under her breath. She truly believed intimidation would bend reality in her favor. It only confirmed one thing: she had absolutely no idea what she was stepping into. While officers sorted through the immediate situation, I quietly stepped aside and made a call to my contact at the state attorney's office. Within minutes, the atmosphere shifted. The officer's demeanor subtly changed. Questions became more precise. The situation was no longer a petty neighborhood disagreement, it had potential legal weight. Karen's confidence began to crack. She attempted to regain control, piling on more exaggerated claims about harassment and hostility. But with my documentation solid and my contact aware of her actions, her words carried no authority. The officers were clear and professional. The truck remained with me. Any further attempt to access or use it without permission would result in immediate legal consequences. That landed. By the time the police wrapped up and drove away, Karen stood stiff with frustration. Her son lingered beside her, shoulders slumped, realizing just how close he had come to real trouble. For the first time, I truly understood the level of chaos she was capable of creating in this neighborhood, but I also realized something else. I now had the upper hand, and that's when the real strategy began, one that would make absolutely sure she never tried pulling something like this again. Karen stormed back to her house that afternoon, her face tight with disbelief and anger. But I wasn't naive enough to assume that meant it was over. People like her don't quit. They regroup. And I had no intention of being caught unprepared. After locking my truck safely inside the garage, I began documenting everything. Photographs from every angle, timestamps, detailed notes about each interaction, what was said, who was present, how events unfolded. I built a record that couldn't be twisted, because this was no longer just about a truck. It was about establishing boundaries in a neighborhood where entitlement had gone unchecked for too long. If she tried to spin stories to the neighbors or escalate things further, I would be ready with facts. By evening, my phone rang. It was my contact from the state attorney's office. "We've got your back," they assured me. "If Karen attempts anything else, we'll move quickly," my contact assured me. "Just don't escalate things unless you have to." That was all I needed to hear. Knowing there was real legal authority standing behind me changed everything. I wasn't just defending my truck anymore, I was defending it with weight and credibility. Karen didn't waste time. The very next morning, she launched her first attempt at retaliation. She marched down the street like a politician on a campaign trail, knocking on doors and cornering neighbors in their driveways. Her story? That I was overreacting, that I was abusing influence, that I was somehow the aggressor. Her son followed closely behind her, trying to mirror her confidence, but it didn't quite land. He looked uncertain, like someone acting in a role he didn't fully understand. If it hadn't been so irritating, it might have been funny. I didn't confront her. I didn't defend myself publicly. I simply greeted neighbors with my usual calm demeanor. A nod, a smile, a simple good morning. I let my composure speak for me, and it worked. Many of them had already seen Karen's pattern, how she inflated minor issues into full-blown dramas, how she thrived on control, how she always positioned herself as the victim when things didn't go her way. Quietly, without spectacle, they sided with me. By the time Karen retreated back to her house, it was obvious her performance had drawn no applause, but she wasn't finished. About a week later, she made a riskier move. Early in the morning, before most people were awake, she slipped onto my driveway again. This time, she clearly hoped to avoid confrontation altogether. Just take the truck and deal with the fallout later. That was the moment I decided subtlety was no longer enough. I had already informed the police about the possibility of repeated attempts. The state attorney's office was fully aware of the situation. Every interaction had been documented: photos, dates, timestamps, written accounts. I placed a simple, polite note on the dashboard, clearly visible through the windshield: any unauthorized use of this vehicle will result in immediate legal action. State attorney has been notified. No threats, just facts. Later that afternoon, noticed Karen pacing near the sidewalk, glancing toward my driveway. She was searching for an opening, still convinced she could somehow reclaim what she had decided belonged to her. Her frustration was obvious now. Her confidence was cracking. Even her son seemed uneasy, realizing he had been dragged into something much bigger than a petty neighborhood dispute. For the first time, Karen was facing a reality she couldn't control, and that was her real weakness. She had underestimated me. She had underestimated the legal system. and she had definitely underestimated the neighborhood's patience. The longer she clung to her illusion of authority, the more dramatic the fall would be. The stage was set for the final confrontation when she would never see coming. Sure enough, that morning arrived. Karen appeared at my driveway again, her son at her side. There was a determined look on her face, like this was her last stand. One final attempt to assert dominance. But this time, I was more than ready. I didn't rush outside immediately. I let her confidence build. I let her believe she might succeed. Her son climbed into the truck once again, glancing around nervously. Karen stood nearby, holding her phone like it was some kind of weapon. Before the engine could even turn over, I stepped out calmly. "You're out of options," I said evenly. "The state attorney is fully aware of your repeated attempts. The police have been notified. Any further action will lead to immediate legal consequences." Karen's face lost color. For a brief second, she looked stunned. But stubbornness kicked in. She began accusing me again, claiming I was harassing her, bullying her, escalating things unnecessarily. Her words had no impact anymore. I had the evidence. Photos, time records, witnesses from neighboring homes who had seen everything unfold. And most importantly, official backing from the state attorney's office. Her theatrics meant nothing against documented facts. I knew it was time to finish this. I stepped aside and made a call. I requested that a formal warning be issued, something direct, official, and impossible to dismiss. The letter would cite multiple attempts at unauthorized use of private property and outline the legal consequences of continuing. Within the hour, a certified letter was delivered to her doorstep. The expression on her face as she opened it was unforgettable. This wasn't a bluff. It wasn't neighborly tension. It wasn't HOA politics. It was a legal reality. Her son stood behind her, reading over her shoulder. His earlier arrogance had completely disappeared. He looked anxious now, clearly questioning the wisdom of everything that had led to this point. For once, Karen had nothing to say. The bravado was gone. In its place was a mixture of embarrassment, anger, and something else, fear. Across the street, neighbors watched quietly from their porches. No cheering, no drama, just understanding. Karen had finally collided with the boundary she couldn't bulldoze through, and after that day, the attempt stopped. My truck remained exactly where it belonged, parked safely in my driveway. Untouched. Karen retreated indoors, licking her wounds, while the neighborhood slowly returned to its normal rhythm. I didn't celebrate. I didn't taunt. I simply stayed steady, maintaining the same calm vigilance that had carried me through the entire ordeal. Looking back, the lesson was clear. Entitlement and arrogance can blind people to consequences, but patience, preparation, and the right legal support can completely shift the balance. Karen learned that lesson the hard way, and the neighborhood learned something: to not fear, but respect. Respect for boundaries. Respect for accountability. In the end, my truck never left my property, and Karen's illusion of control shattered piece by piece. Some people treat rules like suggestions. They assume consequences are optional, but reality eventually corrects that mindset, and when it does, the impact is unavoidable. As for me, I went back to enjoying my truck, my weekends, and my peace of mind. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing I had handled everything without rage, without threats, without ever raising a hand. The entire neighborhood had witnessed it unfold, and one thing was certain: Karen would think twice before ever trying something like that again. If you enjoyed this story and want more wild HOA and Karen encounters, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Smash that like button if you enjoyed seeing Karen face real consequences, and drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my position. I read every comment, and your story might just inspire the next one.